There are a ton of great consoles out there, and given that there is only one more spot on this list, there's just not enough room for all the great game consoles ever made to fit in here. So let's talk about some game consoles that were great, but were just shy of hitting this top 10 list. The first game console I want to talk about is one that many of you thought would be number 1 in the comments, because of my love of Sega: the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast is a system that was awesome and innovative, pioneering in online gameplay and graphics, and having some of the best games ever due to it pretty much having identical hardware to what Sega was using in their Naomi arcade machines at the time. Why isn't the Dreamcast on my top 10 list? Well, the controller. If you look at the selection of titles available for the Dreamcast, most of them were Capcom games, and most of those Capcom games were fighters, kinda like on the Sega Saturn. But unlike the Saturn, the Dreamcast controller was not designed for fighters at all, having a 4-button layout as opposed to 6-button. Playing Marvel vs. Capcom, one of the best games on the platform and plays exactly like its arcade version, is a chore just because of the poor button layout on the controller. But not all fighting games are 6-button. Some are 4, just like SNK's King of Fighters and Soul Calibur. Even these games are a problem to play thanks to excessively small and very hard plastic buttons that grate on your thumb after just a few rounds of playing. There are other games on the Dreamcast that don't need this kind of fast, tons of button pressing gameplay, but even they are hindered by another part of this controller: the analog stick. Its hard plastic with raised bumps make it very uncomfortable when compared to the Nintendo 64 controller, or the PlayStation's DualShock. Hard plastic aside, it has these raised bumps that it's trying to use to go ahead and allow you to have a good grip on this stick, but my thumb constantly slipped off this thing. So I tried to switch over to the D-pad, and I'd rather die. This thing is so sharp that it's less usable than the Xbox's Duke D-pad. I like how the controller is sized, I like the analog triggers, I like the VMU, but the Dreamcast controller is just terrible at playing video games. It is almost necessary to own an arcade stick to enjoy this system. Its spiritual successor, the Xbox, fixed most issues that I had with the Dreamcast controller, and upgraded every bit of the internals the system had, making it a tremendously better console all around, which is why I put the Xbox on my list, and not the Dreamcast. The next console is one I saw mentioned a bit in comments on Game Gavel's Facebook page, and I feel it deserves a mention as well: the Nintendo GameCube. This console was not underpowered compared to the PS2, as it had better internal hardware. This console has not just one amazing controller, but 2 amazing first-party controllers, a super comfortable wired controller that fits your hands like a glove. And while odd-looking, it has a fantastic button layout that makes playing games so easy to do just because you don't even need to look at where your hands are. The different sizes and shapes of the buttons on the controller just make it easy to be able to use. But Nintendo didn't stop there, and they innovated the first-party wireless controller, the Wavebird, which is just as comfortable, slightly different, but just as comfortable, and is able to play wirelessly and seamlessly with no lag that I could notice. So what hinders the GameCube? What kept it from being on my list? To me, games. Some of my favorite games are on the system: Resident Evil 4, Wind Waker, Smash Bros. Melee, Mario Kart Double Dash, Sonic Gems Collection, Mario Party 4, Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes, Eternal Darkness, and the first 2 entries in the Metroid Prime series. But really, there isn't a whole lot else that attracts me to the console, or anything else really that I'm looking for. I got this system pretty much for the core Nintendo games, and nothing else because it lacked third-party support. Another downside to this console is that the GameCube has the digital out port for 480p, and a lot of games support it. But if you look for a component cable for your GameCube, you're going to pay through the nose for it. They go for about $150 on eBay, and as far as I remember, I never saw the component cable out for the GameCube in American stores when the system was released originally. The PS2 and Xbox were able to do component out on the exact same AV port that was built into the system, and because of that, the cables were cheap and easy to find. Heck, even the Dreamcast could do really good graphics with a VGA adapter, which is about $50. But $150 for a component cable just to play your GameCube in 480p? No thanks. I can get a Wii for cheaper with component cables, and it's backwards compatible with my GameCube games. In fact, I play most of my GameCube games on my Wii, which should say something about the GameCube that I don't even prefer playing the games on the actual GameCube itself. The last console I wanted to mention is one I don't own, but I know how great it is. I've played it, I love it, it is a fantastic system, the Neo Geo AES. This console is the arcade-at-home game console of choice, a controller that is an actual arcade stick, and some of the best games to ever be released in the arcade, released at home, with only very slight differences. The Neo Geo AES is easily one of the most fun consoles I've ever had the chance to play. Unfortunately, buying one is another matter. Even today, the console will set you back $200 to $300, and the games can even be more expensive for more popular titles, like Metal Slug, which I have found in the $400 range. It is a massive investment to be able to get this system, and even back when it was released it was super expensive. To top it off, there aren't even that many games for it. Between the cost and game selection, it would have been very difficult to fit this game console on the list, no matter how amazing it is. And that does it for honorable mentions. I'll see you guys next week for the reveal of the #1 game console of all time, and why it's #1 on my list. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and to buy or sell any of the games or consoles discussed in this episode, go ahead and visit GameGavel.com, the only auction site built by gamers for gamers without the high eBay fees.